It's hard to understand the way that you went out. I bet you're living with a little hint of doubt. Maybe next time when you gotta show your hand, you won't cut and run, you'll finally make a stand. 'Cause I know it's true, I'm finally getting to you. We're not through. Yeah, I know it's true, I'm finally getting to you. Existential questions always get you down. All you want to know is are we lost or found? Is there something that you feel you need to chase? I bet you thought you put me in my place. 'Cause I know it's true, I'm finally getting to you. We're not through. I know it's true, I'm finally getting to you. Yeah, I know it's true, I'm finally getting to you. We're not through. Yeah, I know it's true, I'm finally getting to you. You can run, you can hide, but inside, I'm finally getting to you. Yes, it's true. I still love you, but I am getting to you.
Stand by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2, 1. Mark.
Welcome back to the Resupply with me, Guy Next Door.
Me, DK.
And me, Than.
Bringing you your well-produced double tap of all things Space Marines and Laserforce. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Hello, fellas. How you doing? Good. I'm glad. You sound
Not as good as
all
Than's
in.
cat. Not as good as Than's cat, apparently. So
Apparently, JJ has just decided that no, he's going to be like right here, just out of camera view, but he's going to like purr and chitter so that you know he's here. So sorry,
just
not
my
really
tummy.
sorry.
a little low-level background cat radiation anyway. It's all good.
Yeah, we'll be quiet. Then you can clip the white noise that comes from your kitties, and then if you need to, you can like rest to it. It's gonna be nice. Gonna be bloody nice. It's very
Great
nice.
white noise machine.
Welcome to September, boys. Did you know it was September? I'm sure you did. It's on
I
the
did not.
calendar.
Totally, it was the very first thing in my Google Calendar today was, hey, it's September.
Bro, it's September.
What is it? Domvember. That's the other side of September, right?
Oh, very good. Thank you, Lucy. Appreciate it. Gibbo, thank you for
on this channel.
the sub. The reason why I bring it up, not necessarily to for you to sub to your second favorite laser tag podcast, but fourth favorite
laser tag related.
It's in the top
podcasts.
5.
It's in top
It's
5.
in the
Maybe.
top 5
Top
laser
10.
tag podcasts on everyone's
Top
list.
10.
Top
for
10. Yeah,
sure.
let's just say even top 10.
Oh,
But
I'm a little more confident. It's only top 5. Come on.
top 20 maybe. I bring it out just to say support your local creators. If you have channels that you follow on Twitch, not this one but other people's, you get cheaper subs, and I think Twitch takes the hit on those. So support your favorite streamers. Not okay, that's not what I
But
was
maybe
talking
this one.
about.
Doll.
Dolly, not us. Like, actually, not us. Other better people. Whoever you support, the goal really is
Make more lights go boom.
Dolly, thank you so much for those gifts. Though. That's very nice of
In
you.
my immortal words.
Yeah, in your immortal words.
Make more lights go boom.
Make more lights go boom. Thank you, Dolly. Appreciate those gift subs. Spend them elsewhere though. Spend them on Gibbo's, or actually spend them on Gray's channel. Go to exclamation Gray. I think I've updated it. Gray. That's the one. There we go.
Hey, there you
All
go.
up to date. All up to date. Support the 5th favorite Lasers podcast. Exactly right. Top 5.
See? Top 5.
Top 5.
I'll take it.
How you guys doing? You had a good week? Everyone feeling spiffy?
Spiffy
No.
and a half.
Spiffy and a
No.
half. Ooh.
Well, I'm glad that one of us is feeling spiffy and a half.
Yeah,
That's-
Than
that's cool.
unfortunately is dealing with Klingons this week, so he's not having a great week. Are you, Than?
Nah, it's just been a week of unexpected expenses. I got to drop money on a new fridge today because my existing fridge went splat, and I was like,
Freons.
really? Yeah,
not
fuck off.
Klingons.
Yeah,
It's a little
and
different.
and I've also apparently hit that stage where I'm too old to play 3 games of indoor soccer in a single night. I did that on Wednesday, and I've apparently cooked my left knee something fierce. So
I was wondering what that smell was. It's good
yeah,
to know.
it's
Yes,
cooked,
I think
but
the maximum age for that sort of behavior is probably under the age of all 3 of the hosts of this podcast. So,
As they say, the foot bone is connected to the thanatos. There we go. That'll work. Those alerts still going. We're gonna breeze past it. We're not even gonna acknowledge it. Right
No.
past.
no.
I say
More
that
lights
happened.
go boom.
We just played like 40 games of laser tag in 5 days, like 3 weeks ago. But whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, other than that, like, okay, fine. Yeah, just varying degrees of unexpected expenses and bodily pains are like dumb.
Yeah, how to surmise your 40s. This is exactly that
Yeah.
sentence. That's an under 30s thing? I don't know. When you get to our age, then you start spending money on nice stuff, which, nice stuff comes with a price tag. October's going to be rough on you, old man. What's happening on October?
Going to
Do you owe
Loveland
do you owe Joe money?
for no,
Okay,
no,
good.
just going to Loveland to play some laser tag on the 3rd and 4th. So we'll see how that goes.
You've done so much traveling for laser tag over the last couple of months. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why all those appliances are breaking. They just can't handle and go and play that much laser tag.
Yeah, they're like, come back, rescue us from the Klingons. Speaking of supporting laser tag creators, exclamation Tivia in chat. So our friend Tivia Chick over at Tivia Chick Loves Laser Tag. You can check out this. I'm going to send you a direct link to the YouTube podcast episode. The current reigning world champs of Space Marines 5.
It makes it so much sweeter that it's so bitter for you.
They were on Tivia's podcast this week, all 6 of them, and honestly, it's a great listen. You should check it out after this show. That's probably the best laser tag podcast. Certainly the most professional that you can listen to.
Well, at least I can be a guest on the Competent Podcast.
I came to many conclusions after listening to it, but one belief I hold very steadfast is I will listen to you. I could listen to you talk about anything. I really enjoy listening to you talk, which is I should probably shut up more often and let you talk more on this one. But yeah, I would. That's why I'm really excited about the stuff that you're currently working on, which is what have you been up to, DK?
Well, I've been trying to cut together some of the games from the longer Twitch streams that are now on Laserforce tournaments, but isolating individual games and do some commentary tracks on them. Did the one for I started at the very end because that was the game I wanted to talk about the most.
Yeah,
the
makes sense.
Game of the grand final, but got some stuff in the works to do some more commentary projects on some of the games at Nats, just to talk about strategy and what people are thinking at any given moment, and just how to analyze your game with the aim of getting better in a lot of cases. Although I will say, as part of this project, I would like to make a personal and heartfelt apology to Leech, because I saw one game in particular where I missed a very obvious chase where Taipan chased him, and I think it actually what the move that Leech did, it like froze my brain and Taipan's brain. We didn't understand what he'd done, and he was like, that was a chase, and I was like, but he didn't cross the line, because I was like so focused on where the line was. But yeah, it was bad, and I missed that call, and I hate missing stuff as a ref. I hate it when refs miss stuff. So
it happens.
I screwed up. It does happen.
Yeah.
But I was just like, oh yeah, I should have caught that one.
Oops.
It's probably one of many that Leech messaged me about after the tournament.
That's fair. Okay, I'll cop the one.
Yeah, it's
at least like Orange nuked like 2 seconds later. So I'm like, okay, it's not like their resub got kicked off of that or something.
Yeah,
something
not like
awful.
There was one I was watching. I think the start of the finals, we got screwed over pretty bad for a series of referee errors, and I won't call out who the ref was, but it was Night Owl. Not calling anyone out specifically, Night Owl, but yeah, we got sort of, unfortunately, and again, these things happen, which is why I wasn't like, oh, we need a replay. I mean, it directly like resulted in us like getting kicked, but that's not what loses you a game. It contributes, but that's not ultimately. It's not the single thing. But games don't restart, no restarts. But these things happen. It's part of our game, and unfortunately, you just got to suck it up sometimes. Just.
It's part of any game with referees. Refs sometimes miss things.
Yeah,
that's just
we're human.
How that goes. Yeah, refs are human beings.
The only thing I would like to see change with refereeing, whilst we're talking about it, is, or at least one of the things, is the way in which referees need to be more aware of. The way refs need to be more aware of chases. So what happens too often, and it's a little hard in some of the areas in our maze, but what happens too often is a referee will see the start of a chase, but they won't move to a position where they can see the end of it. So they see the start, another referee sees the end, but neither knows what happened on the other's end, and so then the chases don't get called. It's a real shame, and it's something that I think we need to train in our player base a little better. But yeah.
Well, that's where I think sites like Brisbane, I mean, maybe not as much now because I know they're mostly running social nights and not doing as many leagues, but at least historically, by running leagues and having regular refereeing, you start to pick up on some of those things. Because for a lot of people, probably they only really referee once or twice a year, maybe at a Nats and then at a regionals. And I mean, unless you're pretty much like only going to tournaments, like I am, was I'm just like, yeah, I ref all the time too, because that's what I have to do to play,
Yeah.
essentially. But if you're not doing that on a weekly basis, it's like refing is just, oh right, this is a tournament, I'm supposed to ref,
You're
rather
supposed to
than
stand there and
like rather than like this is a craft and an art that needs to be learned and practiced.
Yeah.
And you should probably be practicing that as much as anything else related to Space Marines. Like honestly, I would like to see sites, if you have like 14 people or something like that, rather than playing 7v7s, play 6v6 and have 2 refs. Like at least have something in there so you're getting some kind of regular
I think
practice. And with a small number of refs, like you have to cover a wider area, so you have
Yeah.
to more practice other things.
but you also you need it's one of those things where people will step in as a ref and assume, and just assume, well, I know what I'm looking for because I play the game. But people, if you don't know what you're doing as a ref, what I really liked is this tournament, especially with Oakley, is that Al was able to stand with Lucy and say, cool, these are the things we're watching for, and actually have a very experienced player coaching an inexperienced referee on the things that they should be watching out for, which is really, really cool. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about refs and stuff in the past, so yeah, we'll put a pin in that.
Just a quick thought.
Yeah, tangents all over the place. Speaking of tangents, I want to give a very special shout out to Rullet from the Brisbane Laserforce. So we play fantasy rugby league each year, and this year I was invited to join a secondary league where we were playing for a championship ring. Guess who bought the ring home? Thank you very much. It's the old fantasy sports ring. Oh, we'll go back it up.
Nice.
Oh yeah, can't really see it. It's legit. It's got shiny stones in it. It says champion. That's me.
Well, I'm
almost as cool as a belt.
I'm about to say I'm glad that you won something.
I was too, until DK was saying the things he said.
Make more lights go boom.
Yeah, exactly. Had to come and say it's like a championship belt for my finger. There we go. Nailed it.
That's exactly what it is. There you go.
I told him I would wear it on the show today. I don't think I'll wear it that often, although I quite like it's chunky. It's chunky. It's about as chunky as my wedding ring, actually, which I don't.
Not bad looking.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, it's because it's far away. It's just shiny with the lights. So you'd rather have that belt? Me too, bro. Me too. Right, for anyone who's local to Auckland, if you are interested, I mean, most of you I think are part of this page anyway, but we had a Space Marine specific Laserforce group, which we've now changed to our Advanced Members Night group. If you are local in Auckland and you want to join that, please join the page. We went and played Lunacy last night, and we've been talking a while about the kind of effort that goes into recruiting for members nights, essentially.
Yeah.
And that you need somebody there actively recruiting players. We've had some of our guys. I think notably Sneak went down and played like a few weeks ago, and was sort of talking to some of the players there. But we went last night and had a bit of a run around, but there were players there who were like, oh, we've tried to play Space Marines in the past, but we didn't know what we were doing, so it just all ended in a shambles and stuff. And I was like, well, look, we have this Advanced Members Night, you guys can come down. Yeah, exactly right, Tucker, exactly right. The Calkins, because he's there all the time, I would imagine is putting the word to players that sort of stand out to him to say, hey, look, come and play our Advanced Members Night. I met a guy down there last night who used to play back in the early 2000s, the Members Nights back then.
Very different vibe back then for you guys.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm talking like even prior to me playing. He was saying, he's like, oh, I remember, what was her name? Oh, Little Nightmare. I was like, yeah, I remember them. So there, he was, he said that he played back in the day and then sort of only recently come back to the game. So might be some scope to bring back some old players and also expand the members base. But if you have a party night in your local laser tag, get along and play some public games. It's good. Its challenge is like really good because like as a level 9, you're shooting players 5 times before they die, which is just woo.
Yeah, I found that out the hard way when
Oh, yeah.
DK was up here a few it was month or two ago now, and first game at the Wonderland site was like, oh yeah, level 1, sure, cool, and then it kicked in with the upload and went, oh yeah, here's you as a level 9, and the game went from being okay to oof, that is a struggle. And that's okay. I mean, that's what it should be at that point. But
Alitaria, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think you literally didn't get a base in that pub game because they were guarding it, and you're like, I have to shoot like 3 people 5 times a piece. I can't get that base.
You are tuning in from the bathroom of a sushi restaurant. Make sure whatever you do, use the roll. You want to get your hands on the roll, okay? Alatara,
doing lines of resupply in the bathroom.
Alatara, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate the kind words.
Get my shots and lives, man.
Right, let's move. Let's move along. So we obviously we're still on that Nats buzz. We probably will still be on the Nats buzz for a little while. Unfortunately, we won't have a show next week, so we're gonna have to push some of the Nats buzz out a little bit. But I did talk about maybe bringing Rusty on at some point over the next month, so we'll see if we can make that happen. But I wanted to do you could let cousin gamer of Uncle Dane. I don't know Uncle Dane. He sounds related though. Oh, it could be a cousin gamer. We're probably related. If he's Māori, we're definitely related.
You guys all know each other, right?
So Uncle Dane. So we really wanted to talk about some of the nitty gritty, the tactics, if you will, that were employed by a lot of the teams in our maze during Nats, because it as you know, somebody who's played it was somebody who's played many games inside of the Auckland Laserforce arena. It was exciting to me to see how everyone else approached it. So I thought, we'll jump in and we'll talk about some stuff. It's a little harder, I guess, for Dan because Dan was watching from afar.
Yep.
But
I'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out. Plus, you'll be able to give some insight on how the maze used to play versus how.
Well, and there are some things that like I was saying before the show, that might be easier for Dan to comment on because he was watching on stream as so much of it happened. Because the perfect knowledge everybody watching the stream has, and wonders why the fuck these idiots are playing the game because they obviously don't know what they're doing.
Correct.
Why aren't they dropping? Why aren't they dropping when the other guy has some 3 lives?
Yeah.
So all that kind of stuff. But again, sometimes you go back through the games and it's like, oh yeah, on a game by game basis, like almost every game, somebody would get down to 6 lives, and if someone had just double nuked right at that moment, so that was like something that you should watch out for in games.
That tends to happen. That does tend to happen at like a lot of competitions. Like you'll be sitting there getting frustrated as a spectator because you could see in that perfect moment, and that's why we play the games. In that perfect moment, you're like, well, that could have gone so much differently, but they missed the opportunity. But historically, the way that we've been playing Auckland Maze, and this happens, I guess, because you get into habits. So when you have the same teams playing, the same players playing each other every week, you get into certain habits. So the classic strategy for playing the Auckland Arena is at the start of the game, both teams will push to the upstairs. Red base will go up the middle ramp, go upstairs, and usually you'll have the team turn right, or at least the commander or the heavy will turn right and look at green base ramp, and the remainder of the team will sort of run around and go around towards the nests to the long ramp side. Green team will normally run up green ramp, and that will at least send half their team up green ramp, and will come around that initial corner, and hopefully, depending on who's faster, will come around that corner, and usually whoever makes the corner first has the drop on the other player. And then the other half of the team will come up long ramp, and hopefully you get a pincer going. That's the strategy usually that we've played with. Usually within the first 2 to 3 minutes, one of those teams, usually quicker, one of those teams will make the decision to flush downstairs and usually go and hold and disco. That's kind of what I call the classic strategy, classic starting strategy. We were really, really surprised when only the Auckland teams playing each other implemented that strategy, because a bunch of the traveling teams didn't. You guys played very different, very early on. What was your guys' kind of strategy when it came to that start game scenario?
Well, we knew that you guys did classically play either in disco or upstairs. Like, we didn't know exactly where upstairs, because both Aiden and Kodama had played your field before. It's like, oh, but if that mesh net isn't there, like upstairs totally changed.
Yeah.
If the neutral base isn't there, that completely changes upstairs. So actually, you'd probably resupply either here or here, and we pointed out like a couple of different areas. But we weren't sure in a lot of cases, like, how important is it to have upstairs? Because initially we were like, it's like having the third floor on Loveland. Like, if you or like the second, third floor complex on Loveland. Like, if you don't have that, you're gonna lose the game. Versus like, well, it's nice, but it's not 100% essential. And so we were trying to figure out, like, okay, where's the best place to resupply upstairs? How do you get upstairs most effectively? And then, like, how do you actually range out from there? Because you don't have as much visibility up there. You don't necessarily know how things are going, like, on the other side of the field and all those kinds of things. So those were like different quirks that we kind of had to figure out. And I kind of thought that after the first couple of Space Marines 5 games that we played, I was curious why people were resupplying in the area they were, like, in between Nest and Claw in that kind of like bendy hallway. Because I was like, guys, Nest seems like by far the superior place to try to resupply, because you have better range and information that's available. There's a lot better visibility that you really, as long as you have somebody watching long ramp, you only have one angle you need to cover versus like having to have somebody on both walls at all times. It was like, that seems like by far the better area upstairs. And then it was just kind of a combination of watching what other people did downstairs also. But in some ways it was like kind of fortuitous that our team had a lot of trouble taking and holding upstairs at the start of games against the better teams, because like we had to figure out other shit to do.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is not working. Like, we can try to keep doing this better, and we need to talk about it throughout the week. But like, doing the same thing over and over again when it's not working, like,
It's madness.
it's dumb.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
It's interesting.
Oh no, DK. We've never been on a team that's done that, trying to just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. And
I eventually, don't worry.
Totem pole. It's interesting you say it, because two things on that. One thing that was wildly different for us is there's a light fitting upstairs on the wall between Nest and what we were calling the hole, but I think you guys called the claw or whatever. But basically, the little room at the end of the diagonal wall upstairs. There's a light fitting that due to the the rebuild and whatnot, they removed that light fitting. So they removed the light bulb and the plastic covering that covered that up. So that left quite a large gap for taller players to be able to see through. We've never had that before, which is why we were like,
I fucking hate it.
Bro, me too. So unless you're like 6 foot, I think, basically that becomes, and my team, aside from Morange, we are all
Not 6 foot.
5'8", 5'8" and below. Yeah, there was definitely an advantage for being taller upstairs looking through that gap, which is why initially I was like, nah, we're going to take it out. You're not allowed to look through the gap. And then I was like, you know what? Like, just because you never got an answer whether or not you could resupply through the gap. So the answer was no, you can't. You cannot shoot through the gap, regardless of if you're resupplying or not. We let go that you could look through the gap because the mindset was initially, well, I can't do it, so no one else should be able to. But that's not a good.
But I did give you an answer on that. Don't say I didn't give you an answer on that. I said you can't shoot through the gap.
There is the adage of I can't do it, so no one else should be allowed to is not a good enough reason to halt people from doing certain things in the arena.
True.
Because I knew where there was a couple of reflex shots where, potentially other people didn't know. Not that I ever used them, but I know. You got toes? Thanatos. Ha! We're bringing it back. No, I don't have enough strength in my Achilles to tippy toe. It is strange. Is that how you approach all of your decision making? As if I can't do it, no one can.
Well, at this point, Trash can't do much of anything, so...
Yeah, that's why they got rid of the stairs. But yeah, so... it sucks. It sucked for anyone not tall enough to be able to, like, see through it.
Well, I was going to say, because, like, definitely Aiden, Eves, and Snuffles are definitely taller than me. Kodama's a bit taller than me, but not... like as taller as they're not
giants,
like, as tall as them. Yeah. It's not some kind of freak of nature.
Yeah.
But he was able to look through that gap, and I was like, just a little bit. I could really just not get it without being all the way against the wall, and I would basically like have to grab it with my hand, and I'm like, that's not safe to do that. So yeah, it was just like but it frustrated me so much. I'm like, I'm just like slightly too short. But but honestly, as a result of that, we just changed our order of operations up there. That I'm just like, okay, Kodama, you have to watch that way because I can only watch long ramp. So I will watch long ramp, but the other two of you need to be
which is
window.
Kind of how we would play and stuff. You Rusty, you use the gap to flirt with each other. Perfect. That's what most gaps should be used for. So the other thing that you brought up. Sorry, I need a better filter. Do
you though?
Yeah, this is how we need our co-host. Honestly,
this would never fly on Tivia's show.
No, she would just edit it, like the thing that we don't do.
Yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure I said something funny then. No, you didn't. You really didn't. So the other thing you brought up was downstairs. So we came into the week saying we know that we can hold disco. We can hold it better than anyone else. So worst case scenario, if we get flush from upstairs, we'll be fine because nobody else can hold disco. Which we then found out that nobody even bothered to hold it because they were like, why would we? We're gonna hold somewhere else.
We did it in not the final match against Brisbane, but in the semifinal against them. We were using it a lot more, and it kind of helped us. But I think that was also because we varied up what we done from a previous game where we're mostly using blue.
Yeah.
The first game of the grand final, I actually don't know why we didn't use disco more. That was one of the things that I went back and was like, oh yeah, we should have used it more because it had worked well in the match that we played them prior to that. But it's not, I think, the only area downstairs that is viable for resupply. It is, I would say it's the most secure in terms of a combination of setting up proper angles and like having means of escape and ways that they can't just pop around one corner and shoot you. Like pretty much everywhere in disco, you have to clear at least 2 corners before you can shoot the medic.
Yeah. Seriously though, players who are biologically lucky to be tall enough shouldn't be handed an advantage just because. No, I agree, but they also shouldn't have that advantage taken away just because as well.
Yeah, but then you get some fields like Brisbane where the short boys like us can get under the walls, and then it's great.
I wouldn't put me in that category because whilst I am short like you, I also have an extension on my front porch that doesn't allow me to crouch.
It keeps the back over the wall.
That's right. That's right. I'm not built for that. I'm built for luxury, is what we say in the industry. But yeah, it like we used to try and hold blue base, blue jet. In fact, back before we removed and Than will remember this fondly. Back before we removed the wall between the discos, both of those areas were viable places to hold a resupply. What's up, Sally?
Yes, they were.
And I was talking to Baden before the tournament actually, and he was like, "Where's the neutral base now if it's not upstairs?" And I said, "It's down in disco." And he was like, "Oh, so why would anyone even bother going upstairs?" Because he still thought that with the diagonal wall, not being a solid wall, and also he thought that the doors were still in disco, which completely changed the way that our arena plays.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Would have to.
yeah, I mean the way that the maze was set up in 2006 was with the doors. It was set up to basically give the most amount of potential static resupply spots.
Mm-hmm. Which is good if you're kind of learning the game. Like if you can put your back to a wall and have one way in, one way out. If you're learning how to defend a resupply or just learning the game, it is an easier way to play, I think. But it also limits you in being able to potentially go what's up, Sol? Go elsewhere, other arenas and play effectively because you're reliant on we need a dead end. We need a dead end area to hold the resupply, otherwise we can't hold anywhere. Which is essentially what prompted us to change in a preparation for Ballarat. Tham was like, "No, we're taking that door out. We're not going to have any easy places to hold," which is better. But so you guys, and what I dubbed at one point as the USA West strategy, you guys learnt how to effectively hold blue base, and you played a very zone of control gameplay, which I didn't think was a thing that would be effective in our maze, and it really was. Assuming that you had good scouts, which luckily you guys did, two of the best.
Yeah, I think that's probably why on a casual night it's like, well, either you take disco or you have control of the upstairs, because I think you do need to, and I don't want to make this sound like I'm just building up our own team and stuff like that. But you do need very skilled personnel to pull that off effectively.
You do.
Like if people are not on it and they're being lazy in how they're getting resupplied, or they're just kind of hanging out and not being in the spot that they're supposed to, that area is way harder to defend. And it's probably not going to work if you're just playing kind of like agile mode. But if everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, I found it to be quite strong, because it basically forces the enemy to use disco as a means of attack. And the problem with that is it's much easier to pinch off the two ends of disco if you are if you're holding that versus if you're trying to attack into it. Right, because it's like if you're just one person who's trying to go in and out of disco, there's only one way in, one way out on either side. So it's like if you're the only person going through there, you're going to get bounced around if you have defenders in the right spots.
Yeah,
and that was like key to picking up a certain number of resets and accumulating enough points in some of those games against Brisbane, where either we beat them on points in that first match in finals, and then we kept it close enough in that first game, even where we got elim, where we're like, okay, as long as we get an elim of pretty much any kind against them, we can still win.
Yeah. You didn't realize until after the tournament, Thunder and you were playing so well off each other without seeing each other. Karama that's how you know when you got something special, right? Is that the communication's still there, but it's the stuff that you don't have to yell at each other that just clicks. It's something that everyone just dreams about.
Game flow when it's when it's working well and your game is flowing between all the teammates with a minimum of communication, it's a beautiful thing.
It's real nice. It's
a lot of games we had like specific instructions for Caleb or Snuffles or Kadam or stuff like that. Like, I want you to do this and then this. But pretty much every game was, and Eves, figure it out. We know you'll make the right play. Just go do thunder things and bother the other team.
It's interesting that teams are still willing to use blue as a viable resupply spot with a neutral target right there for attackers resets. So I would imagine, and it's hard because I didn't see firsthand, obviously being a lazy heavy, not an attacking heavy. I didn't see a lot of opposition resupplies, specifically holding in the blue base. But I would almost say that you could kind of use that as an advantage as the defending backline holding in blue base.
It's much better as a defender.
It gives you that. Oh, sweet! I just repelled that attack when he's running down the hallway. Boop, boosh. I would say it's more of a detriment to attackers. It gives you that, instead of having to hit your resupply, which happens so much. You yelling for a gun from the ammo. Now you don't have to take, lose those points and take that life off the ammo. You can just get it off the base.
Well, and in all honesty, rewatching some of these games, something I haven't narrowed down on it enough yet, but something I do want to look for is in some of the really close games that were within maybe a couple hundred points of each other is how many times did somebody reset off their own team and then not get the reset on the other team? Because it's like,
it's too fast.
If a game is that tight, that might cause you to lose.
Huge. It's when people panic do it. So, where they just hit a thing and they're immediately looking for the reset. Instead of waiting that couple of beats, they hit their person immediately and then still have to wait, the 4 seconds or whatever. It's a tough one. Like, if you don't have to take that life, don't take it. You never saw Sneak when we took second in 2006. Exactly right, Sol. That good rotating resupply, it's a beautiful thing. But one thing that you guys, I did notice in a game, I think I was reffing in the downstairs underneath, is just seeing essentially 4 people kind of cruising downstairs and just holding downstairs. And what it means is that it nullifies the strength of upstairs. So now if you're no longer trying to... And we've had players in the past kind of do this, and people were like, oh, they're just mothing. Well, sort of, but actually, if you have a whole team doing it, it's not necessarily mothing, but rather controlling their own kind of destiny. Like if they're not all running upstairs with a disjointed attack or whatever, they're not feeding points to the other team. So, sometimes as a strong attacker, you kind of need the other team to be feeding you points. And when they choose not to, it can get really frustrating. But I really enjoy watching it. Yeah.
And it's the 2 most important things for any army, don't have anything to do with fighting or actively shooting the enemy. You need intel, intelligence on what the enemy is doing, and you need movement, you need motion, you need a way to be able to get from point A to point B. And having zones of control allows you to do those things, right? Because people are calling out where the attackers are. And if you have control of an area, if you need to send your attackers out, if I know that I'm okay, well, I have somebody over at blue base and I have somebody who's over by green base, I can use that green ramp all day and I know I'm not going to get shot in the back. So I can just use that for my timing and whatever else I need to do. Or I can go someplace else because I know that area is covered.
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest keys is if you know and trust that that your other teammate is controlling the area they're supposed to be controlling, you're not going to get popped in the back, by a scout or whatever. It's interesting. Kadama and Traj both waiting that 4 seconds. You always wait till they're about to tag the opponent before you use them as a reset. Yeah, exactly right. It's the best time to do it, especially if you get them, on the second tone of a missile. That one's a great one.
Perfect. That is 100% the best time to do it. For sure.
Fuck.
Has been known to cause complications in heavies.
Yeah, I think that's what the X-ray showed when I went to the hospital.
Like, you got a missile canceled.
Yeah.
All right, here you go. Take one of these and
Yeah,
call some more.
this will help you poop good. So, one other strategy I noticed. So we noticed the like each team, with the exception of maybe the Auckland B team, just because they were in a similar position to us, where we played so many games against each other, we fall into the habits of doing the same thing each game, which is not necessarily good. It's not bad, but it's not good for variation.
Yeah.
You know, because if somebody throws variation at you and you aren't quick to adapt to it, then it can cost you. But every single team had different strategies, which was interesting.
Honestly, really cool.
Awesome. It was awesome to see.
And I should clarify for the record too that we definitely did not invent the kind of resupply and defend at blue base. I actually first saw the U.S. East team do it, and I was like, there are seeds of a good idea in here, but I was like, but they're not doing these two other things you need to do to hold this area effectively. So if we do that, then we actually can hold that area, because I like a lot of the things that they are doing, like being able to have a better view on where they're resupplying, and to be able to have that extra bit of defense by getting able to reset off that base. Like, that actually is the sort of the makings of a really strong defense. I'm like, but we have to have people in these very specific areas to make it work properly.
What's really interesting about that as well was, so it reminded me that whilst all teams had their own strategies in the maze, all teams essentially developed different strategies for the different teams they were playing at the same time, which is even like kind of cooler. We noticed that when we would play USA East, I've noted here, it's called the Extended Battle for Upstairs. So at the start of each game, whenever we played the USA East team, again, normally you would expect one team to kind of concede upstairs within the first, let's say, 2 minutes of a game, maybe a little longer, but usually around 2 minutes. If whoever's heavy kind of gets hit first, usually the other team will come through and kick them down, and that's kind of the end of it. You're now, one team's downstairs, one team's upstairs.
Yeah.
We were finding with the USA East that wasn't the case. They would run upstairs and immediately go into the nest. Nobody would come around. So this is if they were playing red and we were on green. We would come up green ramp. They wouldn't send a 3-hit around to kind of block the green ramp. They would just immediately go around, and no, I didn't, Karama. I didn't get to see it, which was a real shame. I would have enjoyed watching it. I wish you'd have told us beforehand, because we would have moved the cameras. Jerks. But yeah, so we would go, almost to the mid-game point, and both teams would still be holding upstairs. You'd have one on the green ramp side, one on the long ramp side, and we'd just be smashing each other in the middle with both having people come from behind and getting repelled. So it was this weird, like... spying the gap, if you will. But it was I think it was only really against USA East that it was happening to us. Like, we would be up there for like 6 or 7 minutes, just smashing the shit out of each other, holding and being able to hold and actually effectively resupply on the ramps. Did you have that same kind of experience with them, or did you find that they were mostly kind of employing that hold downstairs kind of strategy? Or it kind of changed.
It kind of changed, and it was interesting too, because I think at least one of the games, both teams had kind of planned to surrender upstairs to the other team. We're like, look, I don't know that we're necessarily going to succeed in a clash against them right off the bat, but that meant that we were essentially like clashing for disco and blue base right off the bat, and then all of a sudden it was, wait a minute, both the resupplies are here. Who's upstairs?
Yeah.
For them, like, people kind of book it up there. It kind of varied, but we were definitely of the opinion that we had an easier time taking upstairs off the start, basically against any team that wasn't you guys or Brisbane. Like you just knew the field too well or had the personnel to do it a lot
Yeah.
better. Again, until the very last game that we're just like, now let's start the game out like we know we're good at, and then in the mid game, that's where I trust us to like make the right decisions, move to the right locations, and we'll kick them out of upstairs at some point in the future. Like we don't need upstairs right away if we know we can just take it 4 minutes later or something like that.
One really cool thing about the going back to holding blue base is, especially if you're a red team, if you could, if you conceded upstairs and you ran straight into blue base, your resupply could immediately get the neutral target, and then the red target is right there as well. Sorry, the green target is right there as well for you to sort of run around and get. So base runs, because I'm old, overweight, and slow these days, base runs can be kind of an issue for us, and it was less so for you guys, for actually most other teams, because most other teams were getting the neutral base right off the start of the game, and that was a real weakness of ours, was base runs. And you kind of need my resupply competent, but sometimes it's nice to have a heavy go down and sort of lead that charge. And I was slow.
A lot of the times, Kodama wasn't getting it right off the start because he wanted to keep it for a reset until probably a little bit later in the game. We decided to move from blue.
Yeah.
Odin would kind of get it sometimes, but not others, because we wanted to let Kodama range out a bit more. Usually Odin would say, well, I'm not going to get the target then, so that way if we do have a 3-hit that comes in, as long as they're down and I have the base, I can keep them down and not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, I would usually just get bases as soon as they were available, because I'm like, that's the most important thing for the medic, is just
get the base.
Get your bases before you die.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, okay, well, if they're done 60 seconds into the game, so much the better. At least I know that we're not going to lose those 2,000 points.
Yeah, exactly.
At some later point.
And usually,
and I mean, it doesn't hurt to have a boost early either, because it's like you can kind of keep that momentum up.
Usually, if you're keeping the ammo alive as well, like once you die out as a medic, they don't have to be anywhere specific. They can kind of, go out and get the bases, assuming that your team hasn't been kicked all over the place, in which case, you're probably going to lose anyway. So yeah. I was going to ask Kodama, you have to ask more about how I parallel paths him into Disco 3 times. I assume that you're talking about the corridor between red and blue base. I assume that's the corridor that you paralleled him.
Because I think he got him like once using the not the tunnels, but the under the tower area, once like by going over the hill, and then once by like going the opposite side of Disco.
Perfect.
Through there. And yeah, Orange was not he was not
thrilled.
Man, I wish I weighed the same as Kodama again. I miss those days. I don't think I ever had those days, to be fair. Not far off him, but using kind of the intricacies of the maze to your advantage is what separates players from good to great. It's real satisfying when you can you would never go over the hill. We all go over the hill at some point, my friends. That's where we live, all three of us over the hill.
Accurate.
Well, and what I liked about Blue Base too is that little cubby that's just outside of Disco. That was pretty effective as a medic, because you can kind of turn like 60 degrees to either side, either get all the way into the cubby, or you can be flush against the wall. So basically, anybody who's coming through Disco, they have to make that 90-degree turn.
Yeah.
Which a lot of times, like if the heavy is under blue, they can shoot them before they even get there.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's like if they're trying to come through and concentrate on the heavy, there were a number of games where some players play with their guns like really far in front of them. So that would actually cross the plane of the Disco door. I just pop them as soon as they were coming through there.
Yeah.
But to do that effectively, you have to have like pretty confident control of Disco, so people aren't just sidestepping through that door, because that was basically, once Brisbane wised up to what we were doing. Yeah, Rusty was pretty much constantly coming through Disco, just sidestepping me and shooting me almost every single time I was in that cubby. So that's one of those things that I feel like it only kind of works because it's a week-long tournament and you don't have a lot of time to make those adjustments to its strategy. So it's like, well, yeah, you guys don't play that on a weekly basis because you sort of know what the weaknesses of that strategy are. And unless you're playing optimally, it's not the best place to resupply. For a casual game, disco is much better to do that. So it like I said, that makes a certain amount of sense. But if you always know where the enemy medic is, yeah, you're going to be able to shoot them a lot. So that we didn't make enough adjustments that last game, so that's why we're like, let's do something different then, because they fucked us up.
So one thing that would have changed, I think, the course of holding down there is if Jar Jar Binks' reflex shot was something that is a legitimate shot. We talked last night with Andre about potentially moving Jar Jar. I've been two minds about it because from a public standpoint, it's a pretty cool place for that statue to be. It's out of the way enough; it doesn't take up too much of the arena. One other area I thought would work was there's a cubby hole just over by the orange base or the yellow base.
Yeah,
that would kind of be cool, but that's kind of out of the way and maybe not enough space to actually have him there.
I was thinking like in one of the corners by red base because there's not a lot of other stuff. I guess you have the beacons over there, but there's not a lot of other, I would say, like cool arena feature stuff. That's over there. So I feel like that could be a place you might be able to put it.
So in the very, very back corner of red base, unfortunately, there's a fire door there. So that would have been a cool place to put him, but you can't because it's a fire hazard. And then they've also just put up some cool decals and stuff, which I think if you had put Jar Jar there, it blocks those off. So I would. That was also another spot I was kind of hoping that we could move him to, but the thing weighs a friggin' ton. It's just it's so crazy. What about the other side of Disco, right by the green base? Like if you enter the maze, turn left and then turn right, he's right in front of you. So the problem with putting him there is because he's so big, it actually takes up most of that corridor. You need him in an area where there's enough space where it's not going to block people from being able to walk.
Plus, Lucy's worked so hard in that corner, as we saw.
Dude, it looks...
so in the last 2 weeks, don't cover it up with Jar Jar now.
Dude, the new mural that Lucy's done, and at some point they'll put lights in there and really light it up. And when that happens, if they don't do it before Lucy makes her way to Brisbane, I'll take photos and post them up because it is awesome. The Space Marines mural that's in there now is really, really cool. It's so dope.
Nice.
There is actually a video. Maybe there's a video on the Discord / on on Facebook. If you haven't seen it, go hunt it down. If you want to chuck a link in chat, Lucy, then people can go and have a look at it. But it's so dope. On your page, right on. Feel free to link it in chat if you want. Right. What was he gonna say? There was another thing I was gonna say actually. That's okay. What other notes have you got on your side?
Well, one kind of concept that I try to think about when I go to different arenas is the idea of having the crux of the arena. Like, what is an area that sort of is kind of the place on which the rest of the game turns? So it's probably not.
Loveland has the third floor.
Well, for Loveland, I don't think it's actually on the third floor. I think it's actually the closet area. So it's at the intersection.
The bottom of the ramp that leads to
the bottom of the ramp that leads up toward chamber.
I agree.
Because from there you have that kind of 90-degree. You can see chamber. You can see what's happening on the third floor. You can see what's happening on red ramp, and you can see what's happening over at the big box. So it's like that's an area where you don't really want to resupply there. And in most arenas, like the area that's the crux is not someplace you want to resupply from, but it's an area that you need / want to have control of. Like ideally we'll control this part of the field because that's going to give us so many more options. Because like if you're on the green side in Loveland and you don't have control of that, and you're trying to defend the third floor, it's so hard to defend third floor because you're constantly having attackers coming on the horizontal axis across third floor, and they're coming up the ramp at you. So you always have to have guns that are going to either side of 90 degrees. So it's not tenable. But if you have even just a scout or somebody down there who's able to then like ping shots on a red ramp, that's helping your offense and it's preventing them from coming into that area to be able to attack you.
Yeah,
So for Auckland,
I suppose I was going to say just quickly for Brisbane, that area is the helm.
the helm and the bridge.
Yeah,
Yep.
helm and the bridge, like kind of hand in hand. You kind of control the bridge, sorry, the helm better if you have control of the bridge. But
Yes.
usually controlling the
You
bridge.
can't really control the bridge though, because it's like that's
so much
that's
stuff
the
happening.
that's the exact center of the like everywhere crosses
Yeah.
through the bridge.
But if you can
But
hold
like
the
if you
helm,
have helm, you can move somebody through
Yeah.
the bridge more.
yeah, exactly. All right.
Exactly. So for Auckland, we were like trying to figure out, well, where is the crux of the field? And like my kind of take on that is that really it is the T intersection on the green ramp.
So
So
they hit the top of the hill.
on the hill to go through there, because like it doesn't have a lot of visibility on its own. But if you kind of control the access points into there, so either you have attackers or defenders at the top of that watching down, or if you're trying to attack upstairs and you have like control of either side of that, that's what gives you the option to do something like defend blue base, and that lets you move your attackers upstairs a lot more easily because they can use that corridor if they want to. Or if you're sending people like up long ramp, their attackers pretty much going to have to come down either middle ramp, in which case they're all the way on the other side of the field and you're going to have a clear shot at red base, or they have to come to that T intersection and go down either side, and then you know where they're going to be, and they're basically like coming into the jaws of your defense where it is. So it's like it's not a perfect analogy, and there are so many areas that are super critical in the Auckland field because it's small but like deceptively complex because of all the different things that you need to control. But that like to my nearest approximation, like I think that's kind of the crux part of the arena is maybe just like that ramp generally, if not the actual middle of it. But like having control of green ramp is massive.
So maybe
for helping.
that's where the philosophies change, because I would say that for us, I don't think Auckland has like a crux as such. There's no one specific spot where you could point to and say you have to control that, because if you don't, the other team will control it and they'll probably win. Like again, like very very specifically with Loveland, either the bottom of that ramp. Like my initial thought is the cubby, but yeah, you're right. The box or whatever it's called.
The closet.
Yeah,
because that was the whole thing that we discussed. Is like, well, you can take chamber, but if you don't have control of closet, it doesn't matter because you don't want to have closet.
Brisbane very obviously is the helm in our summation. It may be different for the locals' perspective, but I would say that they would probably agree.
Brisbane might have 2 or 3 cruxes with how big their field is, but the helm is definitely like the most important one.
We have 2 or 3 from a different perspective. Like we have 2 or 3 because there's no obvious one. I would say for us, with the tactics of us holding upstairs as the point of strength, the crux of our maze would be essentially the top of the middle ramp. That floor space there is so important to control anyone coming up green ramp and middle ramp. Because that means if you could do that as a heavy or usually as a heavy, it's usually the spy heavy will kind of patrol around that floor. It means that the rest of your team can focus on whoever's coming up the long ramp. And if you've got 2 to 3 other players, if you've got your resupply and a scout sitting in that area resupplying or whatever it is, anyone coming up long ramp they should be able to deal with. But yeah, one person can control that spot. Back in the day when we had the mesh,
when you had the mesh and the neutral target there, there's no question. Yeah, that would 100% be the crux of the entire field.
Yeah, I could stand there and control all 3 ramps. And actually, I think so. You said at the top of the show that that the thought was, or is upstairs the same as the 3rd floor of Loveland? And to that I would say no, not anymore, because you don't have the same visibility in Brisbane and in Loveland and also Utah, like in St. George.
I think your guys' field is most similar to St. George.
But even there,
St. George
even there, the visibility across the maze, people can skulk around in the mazy area, but the fact that you can see across the arena and sort of get a good idea of what's happening, you don't have that in Auckland. You don't have that visibility. It's very similar to Syracuse in that sense, where you can't see, what's happening over there. And so now, I think that's the key difference why the upstairs isn't the same as the third floor at Loveland, especially now.
Well, because to me, like Auckland, I would say it played very similarly to St. George in the sense that there is an area that is more secure for resupply, but you sacrifice some visibility or some mobility. And there's an area that's riskier to resupply, but you get a lot more information and you control the flow of the game a bit more. So like the yellow platform and blue base in Auckland, I feel like play similarly in that regard, that I prefer to resupply from those areas because there's more information that's available.
Right.
But upstairs in
yellow
Auckland,
platform?
yeah.
You talk about Loveland.
In St. George.
In St. George.
St. George. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then like for Auckland, either upstairs or for St. George, they're blue cubby, like they're the blue corner that's way tucked in there. Like those are more secure areas for resupply, but you potentially sacrifice some of the visibility, some of the information that's available in other areas. But I like that dynamic that it's like there's a trade-off there. So what are you going to prioritize? Are you going to prioritize intel gathering, or are you going to prioritize safety and defense?
And I guess that depends on the strength of your team, right? Like,
and the strength of the other team.
So this kind of leads into the maybe the historic tactics for Brisbane. Brisbane are very aggressive team. Their main way of them defeating you is they overwhelm you. Very early in the game, they will send out 2-3 hits. They basically had 3 to 4 players attacking, and because they're so effective at attacking, like it's so hard to re-establish yourself after that happens. So they're able to play. We're not aggressive, not bashing or says we are. I think given that they can be a little bit more free with how the resupply right? Like the resupply have that luxury of, well, we don't have to be safe. We can be out in that kind of that more like riskier, but like we've got better information, and when it clicks, it really clicks, which is why they've been so good for so long.
When it goes poorly, it goes very poorly.
And it was interesting to see it go poorly. Well, not, I guess poorly. In some of the games,
it only went poorly for them in 2 games, but that ended up being pretty crucial.
Yeah. I think a couple of the games where we almost had them was we implemented a strategy where we knew that they were going to push out, and so we had a call of home, which we stole from our 2008 campaign, where essentially we would yell home, and our entire team would rush upstairs, and we were able to run past their attacking attacking players,
attacking attackers of attacks,
and rush upstairs and kick their resupply out. And it worked a few times. We just weren't able to close games out with them, but I think we were, which is why I was gutted that we didn't get I was gutted that that finals kind of shook out the way it did, because we had implemented a couple of good strategies that were effective. We just, like I said, there was a game where ref calls went against us, and it sort of counteracted the good stuff we did, and all that excuse. But
what?
Yeah,
tag players making excuses? Nah, never happens.
But yeah, it was working to an extent. It would have been cool to implement it in finals, but I was somewhere else by that stage.
Literally 1 foot in the grave.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Did you have other stuff on your list?
I mean, I'll have stuff I can talk about. Dan hasn't said that much, though. We should let him talk.
I mean, it's one of those things where, for not being there, it's a little hard to speak to some of the things, but observationally, and and this was, big conversation in chat during all the games, like the fucking nuke drops. Oh
Chat's
my.
favorite topic.
Well, okay,
These
yes.
commanders are fucking morons.
Yeah, the old couch commanders. What do they call them? Monday morning quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
couch commander is definitely, that needs to be a new term. From now on, chat is going to be called couch commanders. If you're critiquing in game, you're a fucking couch commander. is what
Dude,
you
I
are.
might have to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna design some merch for the couch commanders. We gotta have to sell
Please
some merch.
do.
Yeah.
Please do.
So obvious. I mean, at this point in our tournament streaming journey, by and large, everybody who is watching does have does have that understanding that yes, we're watching the score monitor, we have perfect information that that obviously in the arena you do not have. Like we can see where everybody's lives are, we can see how everything is stacking up. Now, one of the things that obviously with the Gen 8 suits, you being able to tell like how many nukes you have up just by looking at your gun, like there's no miscounting. You don't there's no such thing anymore as you've miscounted your specials in your head. You look at the back of your fucking gun, you can see how many nukes you have. There's no question. You can see exactly how far off you are. You can see exactly everything. So it is super frustrating when you can see that, okay, yep, you can see and you know that Auckland is playing like a speedball maze, and you see people getting quick nukes. They could drop a nuke that would do some very devastating damage, and they don't drop it, and they hold and they hold, and then they get the second. But by the time they get the second and they throw two, suddenly everybody is already stacked up. And this is not an Auckland specific problem. I'm not saying it's an Auckland specific problem. It is a general issue with dropping of nukes. But it was in a maze like Auckland's, where it is such a speedball maze, and a single nuke can be so devastating. It was so frustrating watching people hold for 2 and 3. I mean, two. I feel like we've kind of talked over the years. Like 2 is kind of this weird nebulous. It's too much, but it's not enough, or it's not enough, but it's too much.
On the double nuke, but
yeah, it's like
I can understand why it's more popular in Auckland, having played the field.
Sure, but the amount of times that you'd be watching a game, you'd see a commander be on any number of nukes, 1, 2, or 3. You see that they are not involved in the game. Like, they are not getting resupplied, they are not getting shot, and they are not shooting. So I say they're not in the ballgame. Sure, they're probably moving into what? Yeah, they're moving, but they're not directly involved. And you can see that lives-wise, like if they would just drop their 1, 2, or 3 that they're holding, like they would just fuck the enemy team so massively, and they don't. And that was. I mean, that's always frustrating. But again, you're dealing with perfect information, and then there be those times where it's like, oh, they've got a nuke up, why don't they drop? And you realize, okay, no, you can tell that they are in the middle of a firefight. Like, they cannot get free right now in order to drop that nuke. Cool, fine, that happens. Like, you're actively involved, you're actively being hit. Of course, you're not going to try and drop in the middle of a firefight. Cool, fine, but yeah, the amount of times where a commander would have a nuke not look like they were involved in the game, and the nuke could have done some real damage, and they didn't drop it.
So there's obviously lots of reasons and scenarios and stuff, but I think one thing that does happen is they might have just got to the nuke, and then they've been involved in a firefight, and have gotten another 10 special points on top of that. And so they look at their gun, oh, I'm on 32 special points. I might as well go for, I might as well just go and hit 8 more people and go for the 2. Worst case you've ever seen was murking for Ballarat and Newcastle. I think the meta has also changed from back then. Back then we were like, oh, you want to drop 4 in a row. You want to string 4 nukes together. Or at least that seemingly was like a Southern Hemisphere thing. Holding 4 nukes to then kill the resupply out in one foul swoop, and hopefully, the heavy as well, and or a scout. But it's changed. The meta's changed since those days. And, especially...
That's the nice thing about the meta, too, is that sometimes it's like stuff goes full circle.
Yeah.
That it's like, well, we developed strategy A to counter B, and then we developed strategy C to counter B, but guess what? Strategy A is pretty good at beating strategy C, so
exactly.
it's like stuff is cyclical.
Than had to go home, so you played ammo. Clint had 3 nukes, but only dropped 2. 3 would have killed Brisbane's resupply. He had 3 nukes, but only dropped 2. I never understood that back in the day. Why people they would drop
just didn't try.
Didn't
try for the
next
next
try
one.
the
It's
next
like,
one.
oh, I only have 2.
I'm gonna pull until it says. Goodness me, that's frustrating. Yeah. You're dealing with, like you said, you're dealing with perfect information, and that couch commander, or even keyboard commander.
Keyboard commanders and keyboard warriors are like something that's like generic kind of lingo. Like couch commander, that's got to be very specific to Space Marines 5. It's like, that one's a gem.
We're
You
gonna
gotta
have
hold
to,
on.
Lucy. We might have to have a chat about that design.
And and Trejo, it was Stallion you merked for, not me. So just yeah.
This would never have happened if you were working for Than.
It would have been worse, because at the time, like, we weren't playing Space 5 in Sacramento at all. Like, we didn't play Space 5 until after I got back from Newcastle in '99.
No, that's not true. We played some. We were still playing
some, but not much.
4, but we'd run a couple of Space Marines 5
we weren't playing much.
So we had a strategy on our team for nukes, which actually turned out to be quite a bad one, where Orange would just keep getting diffused. So that strategy didn't really pay off for us.
I noticed a lot of commanders had that strategy, but I think Brisbane had the most unique of getting diffused by their own team.
Oh yeah,
that takes some real Galaxy brain shit right there.
Yeah. It's like, well, that's a bold strategy. Let's see if it pays off. Doesn't pay off. I was watching. Maybe it was the first round of playoffs, but there was a game where you guys played. It might have been the game you broke down. One of the games there's where Andrew diffused Taipan's nuke, and
that was in the semifinal, I think.
Yeah, it swung the game like immediately back to your favor.
Mm-hmm.
If that nuke could have dropped, game changer. But
it wasn't like 100% that we'd lose, but their odds of winning would have gone up dramatically.
Yeah, it was because right after 100%. That, you guys regrouped, and then your whole team got resupply, and it was awesome to watch the kind of replay, but also like felt pretty bad because getting your nukes diffused sucks.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's not great. Scott. We're there. I give him a hard time. I don't mean to. I think he played very good all week. But that was his only blemish, really, was those. But I was interested to see who had the most nukes diffused over the week. That would be. I don't know if that stat's readily available, but if someone...
that one isn't readily. I mean, you can. Unfortunately, because of the way the code is right now, I don't think the nuke success ratio goes beyond the front digit. So it's only 0 or 1. So maybe if our stats overlord could have it go to the second decimal, we could track that by descending order.
Scott's like, no, we don't need to know that.
you can see on the stats who diffused the most nukes, but not who got the most diffused.
I'd be interested because I think it's a good teaching tool. I watched and was part of.
He certainly was not the only one.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't. It just obviously was every game that that he got diffused, I was playing in, so I just noticed it more then.
funny
Which
that.
makes sense. Yeah. Right. Do we have any other strategy types that we want to talk about? We talked about sort of the classic stretch. We talked about you guys implementing blue base. We talked about the battle for upstairs, the extended battle for upstairs. Did you guys have any other ones that you implemented, or that you can remember any other teams kind of?
We talked about it early in the week, but honestly, the only time we actually kind of implemented it was in the very last game of doing a little bit of long range resupply from the nest. If you can get both the resupplies to top of long and you can resupply someone either at red base or at the bottom of long, that opens up a lot more options for you. So I think a team that is canny enough to have that kind of like masterful control of the upstairs, because that relies on you guys know that your back is covered and that someone isn't going to just sneak in and shoot you both in the back.
Yeah.
But that could open up a lot of options too. Again, it's risky, but it opens up a lot more things, because there was definitely a moment in the final game where I just remember Kodama was over by red base and he was still shooting down like toward blue, and he was just like, hey DK, can you guys resupply me here? And I'm just like, yeah, Aiden, come here. We're shooting Kodama down there. And like we got it going in an orderly fashion. I was like, that was great. We just gave Kodama like 2 doubles and he's gonna go right back into the fight and keep smashing them. This is awesome.
There is a good strat for doing the resupply down long ramp and having someone kind of floating around C bend and shooting into green base. That's quite an effective one. If it doesn't save too much time, because it's a straight shot for anyone to run from the bottom of long up to get resupply. But I mean, it does shave a little bit of time off.
And it gives you that length of backtrack if you need it.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus having to come up and then having to make that trail all over again, because
Yeah.
you get tired running up and down that ramp all the time. Trust me.
Yeah, all of us who do it, we get tired of running up and down the ramps. That's something I definitely do. It is it's an interesting one if you can put your heavy at the bottom of long. If you've got like a scout kind of watching your back in the rest of upstairs, but like you say, you have to kind of rely on somebody watching your back, because otherwise you can get kicked out of upstairs pretty quickly. Yeah, that's a good strat actually. It's a very good strategy. One strategy that wasn't implemented really during the week, or was abandoned fairly quickly, was holding green disco, the green side of disco. The only teams really that ended up sticking with that strategy were the Auckland teams. And even then, did Auckland B end up kind of moving into the blue base by the end of it? I know Doom was just saying before how he said that it's actually really good strategy to hold blue.
I noticed him do it late in the tournament. I don't know if that's primarily they were operating out of, but basically, like, once I saw US East do it and I had suggested a couple of adjustments in strategy, and then we started doing it, I noticed then like Oakley and Auckland B were starting to do it a lot more too. And specifically, I remember one game that I saw some of the things that Ducky was doing in terms of defending that and moving around to different places to get resets. And I told Kodama about that. I'm like, okay, we can add that to the mix too. And I don't remember if that was before or after he pulled all those filthy parallel paths on Orange or not, but I was like, if you can move around the way that Ducky had run that base, like he had that shit on lockdown.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the thing. Like, I don't think I could hold in there because I don't have the mobility at the moment that most other heavies would, that you kind of need to do it effectively anyway. I think
but
maybe
if you can be a turret, no one can get past you.
Exactly.
I saw it.
Yeah, assuming that the flu hasn't taken a hold by then, I'm still King Kong. It kind of ended up working a bit organically. It tends to do that. Yeah, I think with the if the Jar Jar wall doesn't end up moving and we just accept it as a part of the way we just operate our maze, it kind of makes the swing. It swings the advantage back to whoever's holding upstairs, which is a shame, because I think the beauty of this tournament was that our maze was not perfectly balanced, but pretty close. It was just pretty close to having enough different strategies you can implement, and neither was overly more effective than the other. depending on who was kind of playing that strategy, you know?
Yeah, the most effective strategy was the one that your opponent wanted to do but didn't get to.
Yeah, exactly right. And parity is what I mean, it's become more and more important for me in our game is you know, making things as even as possible for both teams to compete, and whoever is the better team is going to win. And not even that, sometimes whoever has the better game is the team that's going to win, without the environment being as big of an impact as it can be.
Right.
Right. Anything else? Is anything else?
That's a pretty good list. The only other thing I was going to mention was one thing that I found interesting in watching some of the replays is that I don't feel like any two teams had exactly the same like opening resupply order of who they hit, how many people they hit, what order they hit them in, whether or not they hit anybody like off break. Because there are lots of arenas where it's like, oh yeah, we'll resupply everybody except maybe for this one person who's going to dash across the field. But it's like, since you can be in contact with the enemy in 4 seconds in Auckland, pretty much no matter what you do, unless you're going to a very specific ramp, it's like you really need to start thinking about that. Are we going to resupply anybody? If we're going to resupply, who should it be? Where should they go so they don't get reset right off the bat? Are we going to need that many active guns at the start of the game that we can't resupply people? So those were interesting things to see also, because I like when that wrinkle is added to a lot of fields. That's why in some ways it reminded me of St. George, because there are sometimes in St. George where it's like, okay, we're going to resupply everybody except this one person. And there are other times where it's just like, now maybe just the ammo gets and everybody else gets into the fight immediately because we're trying to take this one specific area. But that was interesting to see.
That stuff it makes for such like rich games. It's really fulfilling to play those kind of games, or play those kind of that kind of tournament where, you know, strategy and team tactics and all that sort of stuff is so important. I mean, we've been beaten in our arena in the past from from superior team tactics.
Correct.
And it's, you know, it's interesting to see how people come in and they play in your house. I haven't seen it happen for a little while. I think at this point, you know, lots of people have played Brisbane so many times at this point that, you know, there's not too many different things you can try and have them kind of pay off. But, you know, Auckland was almost that great equalizer where we got the chance to kind of do that. So it was cool, man. It was cool.
It was good fun.
It was good fun. Real quick before we head out, want to do one last shout out to Tivia Chick. Go check out the recent podcast that she did with DK and the rest of his team. Really good watch. I listened to it this morning. I really enjoyed it. It was really, really cool. I don't think we'll have a show next week, unfortunately. I have some family stuff that I need to go attend to, so we'll keep you guys updated in the Discord. We've been pretty quiet on the channel over the last few weeks. Obviously, I've still been in recovery and had social things happen, but we will try and do Thunderdome this week, assuming that these 4 walls don't ruin everything. And again, bands, man. Bands. And we'll try and play. I really want to get back into Dave the Diver, because I'd like to finish that game on stream. I was having a bunch of fun with that pre-nat, so we'll try and do some more of those streams. We'll keep you guys in the loop on Discord. Join the Discord if you're not in there already. Join the Auckland's Advanced Members Night page if you live local, or even if you don't, give it a follow anyway. But for this week, I've been Fantasy NRL Champion 2023 Guy Next Door.
I've been 2023 Laserforce Internationals Champion DK.
And I've been Than.
Missed the opportunity to say it. I've been Couch Commander Than. I thought we were on the same wavelength, but I guess we need to work on our team tactics.
Always remember to backtrack, kids. We will see you next time. Ka kite anō. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye. Oh, the button, it's not there. There we go. Bye.